You know those projects that haunt your imagination? The ones that whisper to you in the middle of the night, begging to be made?
Make me, make me, make me already, ML.
Well, this is one of those projects. The Tomb Sweet Tomb art from the Haunted Mansion ride, or even I guess it's now in the Disney Treasure Haunted Mansion parlor, is one of those projects that have lived rent-free in my head for years. So today I'm going to start bringing it to life. Grab your doom buggy, let's wander to the workroom. Welcome, foolish mortals, to the workroom. This thrifted frame has good bones. The oval shape reminds me of the Haunted Mansion main sign, but it could use a little work to make it perfect. So I plan on sculpting some embellishments. Think Halloween meets Hocus Pocus, meets Haunted Mansion, meets Nightmare Before Christmas. All the vibes that I live on. The cross stitch for Tomb Sweet Tomb will go in here, and that I used the website Stitch Fiddle to create a pattern that I could follow based off the original designs that I'd seen. Since the cross stitch will take some time, let's get comfy and get to stitching.
I picked out some cross-stitch fabric in a creamy color and placed that in a hoop. From the inspiration pictures, it's difficult to tell what the color of the background is, but I like the antique look of this color as opposed to a bright white. I found the center of my cross-stitch design and the center of the fabric, which I marked with a disappearing ink craft pen. I always like to start from the center. It helps everything stay balanced and makes sure I don't run out of fabric on one side. If you've never tried cross-stitch before, it's honestly one of the most beginner-friendly crafts out there. You're just making a series of tiny X's on fabric that's woven in a grid, so your stitches stay neat and even. Bring the needle up through one hole, cross diagonally, then make another diagonal in the opposite direction to finish the X. That's it, one stitch at a time, and before you know it, your design starts to appear like pixel art coming to life. Here, I'm stitching part of the letter E, working a few stitches in one direction so I can come back along that row and finish each one. Like deciding where to start, there are a lot of ways to approach stitching, one stitch at a time, row by row, or column by column. You can even bring the needle from the top of a finished stitch to the bottom of the next one in a single movement instead of the stab stitching method I'm using here. It can be pretty cathartic to stab the fabric, but try different methods and see what feels right for you. Once that row is finished, it's time to move on, counting stitches, checking the pattern, and letting the design slowly take shape. Cross stitch has this lovely rhythm, calm, repetitive, almost meditative. Each tiny X adds a little more magic to the fabric. Let's fast forward a bit and watch as the words Tomb Sweet Tomb appear, one ghostly stitch at a time.
Just a quick update. I finished stitching the Tomb Sweet Tomb. I have the mat here, so I don't have to carry the frame. When I roughly place it on, it looks pretty good. Right now there's nothing on the mat, and I don't really plan on changing that because there'll be a lot going on, or at least I hope a lot going on with the frame. So I don't want to take away from the art or the frame, but it does seem like there's some empty space on the top and bottom that could use a little something extra. So I'm going to see if I can sketch up something maybe floral to tie back to the mat that had the flowers on the original. That'd be a nice nod to that inspiration and zhuzh it up a bit. Yeah, so I just need to sketch something out and see if I can get a design that'll work with what I want to do, and then get to stitching that if I figure it out. All right, we'll carry on.
before diving into the next part of our project, I need a little intermission. Target acquired. Fall is such a fleeting season, beautiful but gone in a blink. It's good to slow down and enjoy the leaf show. I guess no autumn adventure is complete without a visit to see my favorite pasture puppy, Misty. She was very enthusiastic about the clover situation. She knows to enjoy it before winter comes and the clover is not to be found. These small pauses always refill my creative energy, and honestly, isn't that part of the magic of this season? Cooler temperatures activate my baking mode. So back home, it's pumpkin spice everything. Pumpkin spice chocolate chip muffins and pumpkin spice bread pudding with what I have discovered is my new favorite ingredient, frangipane. How have I never made that before? All right, I've had my snack, break is over, let's get back to the workroom and start on the sculpting part of our program.
Today is a new day. I have finished stitching, or at least I think I've finished stitching. I may go back in and add some other elements once I've got the frame situated, but right now it's good enough and I'm happy with it, so that's great. The next step is to work on the sculpted elements for the frame. I've got the glass removed so I can mold on top of this. I am going to add some plastic wrap so I can work directly on the frame. It does have a bevel, or actually a couple bevels and contours that I need to work around. So the plastic wrap should allow me to sculpt on it and then remove my sculpts to throw into the toaster oven for baking. And then I need to condition my clay because it's been in storage for a bit. And those should be the next prep steps. Plastic wrap, conditioning the clay, and then I can work on attempting some of the sketches that I made for some cool designs. One is Salem inspired from my recent trip, and then others are just kind of sketches I put together from various elements to tie in all of those inspirations. The Halloween, Hocus Pocus, Haunted Mansion, and Nightmare Before Christmas. So we'll see how it all turns out. All right, let's get to it.
Here I'm adding a couple of layers of plastic wrap to the frame. This is probably not necessary, but I found it helpful. I could mark on it with permanent marker so I knew where the center was to help align my sculpts, and it helped keep things from sticking. The first sculpt I'm working on is a stylized death's head, something classic but with a bit of personality. I've already conditioned the clay by running it through a pasta roller a few times, and I like to add a touch of mineral oil to make the process a little smoother. When I sculpt, I like to think in rough shapes first, simple forms that I can blend and refine as I go. Here I'm starting with a sphere and a cube, basically a round head and a blocky jaw, and then joining them together to get that rough skull shape. I was going for a slightly cozier interpretation, less Salem Ancient Tombstone, more stop motion Halloween. I smushed the skull onto the frame where I wanted it. I did this before adding features. This allowed me to apply enough pressure so the back of the skull could mold to the frame contours. Then I could add in the eyes, teeth, and nose once it was secure. While Neon Halloween is very in this year, I should probably note at this point, ignore the bright colored clay. Trust the process. Everything will make sense, hopefully, once we get to painting. I was simply using what I had on hand, which was neon colored polymer clay. In terms of design, I went really abstract with the wings. The process is to make a series of clay snakes that I curled into the merest suggestion of wings. It was very challenging to make these symmetrical. They are definitely more sisters than twins. With the wings created, I gently smushed those onto the frame. To add the hint of feathers, I made some marks with a drinking straw that I had cut to give me the types of impressions I was looking for. I love owls, so for the bottom of the frame, I wanted something that brought in the curly shape of the death's head in a more Baroque style that felt more like Haunted Mansion. It's still slightly abstract, but a bit more detailed. I'm following the same sculpting process here. Break things into their smaller shapes, join them, make clay snakes for details, add in refined details with the different tools, use the tools for smoothing, joining, shaping. Really could keep working these things for a long time, but eventually you get to good enough. Although I had added a little detail, I was able to smush the owl to the bottom of the frame without harming any of the face detail based on where I needed him to connect to the frame. One of the sculpting tools I was using had a knurled texture on the handle. I rolled that handle onto the owl wings to give them some dimension. When it came to the side sculpts, I decided to experiment a bit. I had these plastic cabochons tucked away, the kind of random craft supply you save because someday it might be perfect. Today was that day. I switched gears from freehand sculpting to something more structured, creating a pattern base I could cut, texture, and build around the cabochons. Here I'm pressing the cabochons into the clay to create a slight impression that I can use for better alignment. Now back to creating clay snakes so I can create a frame around the cabochon. After adding some final details, I removed the cabochons from their frames. I'm not sure how they would fare during the clay baking process, so I'm erring on the side of caution by removing them. Once the sculpts were done, I carefully removed them from the frame. I then pushed some aluminum foil around the frame in the spots the sculpts would go. This allowed me to mold some baking stands for the clay out of foil. Hopefully this helps the clay to stay in proper position during baking. I then gently placed the clay on the appropriate piece of foil.
Okay, so I'm in my garage where I have my toaster oven specifically for baking the polymer clay. And it's gonna go for 15 minutes at a low temp and we'll see how it turns out.
These have baked and cooled. I've also unified the sculpts and the frame with some coats of matte black spray paint. Time for the moment of truth, assembly. I started with super glue to get everything where I wanted it, and once it looked solid, I reinforced it with some hot glue. Basically, super glue for precision, hot glue for peace of mind. Painting time! I started with black paint on the cabochons and touching up some other areas. Then I mixed up a dark, moody teal for the next layer, something that felt right at home in the Haunted Mansion. I brushed it on and then wiped it back with some paper towels, letting some of that black base show through to keep those deep, spooky shadows. I just kept layering and blending until it felt perfectly eerie.
I was really happy with how the paint job had turned out, but it's lacking some depth. So I've mixed up a wash of a verdigris type color, and I'm hoping to add that in for some variation, maybe do some dry brushing, and we'll see how we make out.
This spray bottle actually started its life as a body mist bottle, but it turned out to be perfect for crafting. The spray is really fine, which gives the paint a nice mottled aged effect. Just like with the teal layer, I spray on a little at a time and then blot it back with paper towels. And I use cotton swabs to get into the harder to reach spots. I like to tilt the frame so gravity helps the paint move, kind of mimicking how weathering would naturally happen over time. I just keep repeating the process until it looks like it's aged beautifully.
All right, hopefully the mic comes through okay. The neighbors are mowing their lawn, but if anyone's curious about the colors I was using to get the sort of Haunted Mansion effect, I have this 48 color kit, all of these guys. For the original sort of dark teal that went on top of the matte black spray paint, I used a mix of bright aqua green, deep green permanent, see if that focuses, and Mars black. For the patina mix, I went a little crazy to try to get that warm green hue. So I used light green permanent, brilliant yellow green, light blue permanent, light blue violet, and a touch of copper. And then mixing them gave me this color, which I then added water to and got some down into this spray bottle to be able to apply it that way. You could use a brush, sea sponge, etc. to get the wash on there, but those were the colors I used for the patina, the verdigris, and then those were the colors that I used for the original quote-unquote Haunted Mansion base color.
Now for my favorite part, the finishing touch of copper dry brushing. This step makes the whole color story click together. I use a stiff brush with barely any paint, dab off the extra, and lightly sweep across the edges so that only the raised details catch the light. But now comes the moment of truth. Will our Tomb Sweet Tomb be laid to rest? Or has it earned its place among the spooky decor for years to come?
That's a wrap on my Tomb Sweet Tomb project. While I can see the little imperfections, that's just the curse of making things yourself. Overall, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think it'll be a fun and spooky addition to my holiday decor. If you've got a project haunting your imagination, this is your sign to bring it to life. Thanks for joining me on today's crafting adventure. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. I've got more thrifting, crafting, tiki, and Halloween adventures brewing. See you soon.